it starts.
All right, I think you are on the air. So,
Sounds
hi
good.
everybody. Hi, it's Frank. So, everybody, I'd like you to meet Frank Perez. He is our technology director for TechUp Group, and so today he's going to be showing a presentation on how to use the marketplace within Azure to set up an app server and just go from there. So this will be a good foundational video. So Frank, thank you very much for taking the time today, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Let me start sharing my screen. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep, we can see it.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. So, welcome to today's presentation on WordPress deployment on Azure, kind of like a general overview. My name is Frank Perez. I'm excited to guide you through the various methods of deploying WordPress on Microsoft Azure cloud platform. I've been volunteering with TechUp for a few years now, and we've supported a few of our customers on WordPress. And we have some further development coming forward in the next few years and on different platforms, different technologies. So lots of exciting stuff coming in the next couple of years. In this session, we'll explore different deployment strategies to discuss their advantages and disadvantages regarding WordPress and help you determine the best approach for your specific needs. Whether you're a seasoned developer or new to cloud services, this presentation aims to provide valuable insight into the deployment of WordPress on Azure. Thank you for joining today, and let's dive into it. So let's begin with a brief introduction to our topic. So WordPress is one of the most popular content management systems in the world, powering millions of websites across various industries. Its ease of use, flexibility, and extensive plugin ecosystem make it a top choice for both beginners and experienced developers. On the other hand, Azure is Microsoft's cloud computing platform, offering a wide range of services and tools to build, deploy, and manage applications. With its global reach and robust infrastructure, Azure provides an excellent environment for hosting WordPress sites. In today's presentation, our objective is to explore the different methods available for deploying WordPress on Azure. And we'll look into the pros and cons of each approach, helping you make an informed decision on the best deployment strategy for your needs. So let's get started. Did I skip a slide? Okay, yes. So before we dive into different methods of deploying WordPress on Azure, let's go over some of the tools you will need to work with Azure on WordPress. First, you'll need an active Azure account. If you don't have one yet, you can sign up for a free account on Azure website, which provides some free credits to get you started. The next thing is a basic understanding of WordPress is essential. You want to make sure that you kind of know the back end and the front end of WordPress so that you can work with content management systems. Familiarity with its installation and configuration, will also help you navigate the deployment process as well. Additionally, having the right tools is crucial. So, for example, working with Azure, you should install the Azure command line interface and an FTP client. You'll need those to work with your WordPress deployments on Azure. Azure CLI is a powerful tool that allows you to manage Azure resources directly from your terminal. You might also find that an FTP client, it will be useful for managing files on your server. With those tools in place, you'll be prepared to explore the various deployment methods that we'll cover today. And let's move on to our first method. So first method for deploying WordPress on Azure is the Azure Marketplace. So when you go to Azure and you want to create a resource, it'll take you to a marketplace where they have third-party deployments and Microsoft created deployments. So it'll be a little daunting at first trying to find what exactly you're trying to deploy. Usually there's like a filter at the top where you can select the publisher type, and that's where you select Microsoft, and those are all the deployments that you can choose that Microsoft has created. Now, Azure Marketplace is a convenient platform that offers, a wide range of pre-configured applications and services. WordPress is one of them, and this method is the most ideal one for those who want a quick and straightforward deployment process without diving into complex configurations. To get started, For example, you would log into Azure portal, you would navigate to the marketplace. From there, you would search WordPress and select the official offering. You'll see different WordPresses. Some of them already display like what their cost is, if it's who was the creator for that deployment, and what you're going to be looking for is for the Microsoft one. The marketplace will guide you through the series of configuration steps, such as selecting the subscription that you want your deployment to be a part of, what resource group, and the location of the server. Because Azure is a cloud platform, you can deploy an application that is hosted maybe on the East Coast, West Coast, in the North, and the South. So it gives you some flexibility there, depending on where you want your site hosted. Also, keep in mind that wherever you deploy your website will also determine the cost. So make sure you research the pricing costs based on regions. When you do select WordPress to deploy on Azure, it will also ask you for what tier you want your server to be. For example, there's a free tier, a basic tier, a standard tier, and each one of those tiers will have its own features offered, such as Azure CDN, Azure Storage, or virtual network configurations. Once you've configured these settings, you can deploy WordPress with just a few clicks. It'll just be like a form that you fill out in certain fields. And the marketplace handles the setup of the necessary infrastructure, including the virtual machine, if you choose that way, Azure Storage, and networking components. No real hands-on manual configuration. It's all taken care of for you. One of those main advantages, like I said, is simplicity and speed. However, it may offer less flexibility compared to other methods, especially if you need to customize server environments, IP addresses, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Overall, the Azure Marketplace is a great option for quickly getting a WordPress site up and running so you can get your feet wet, and we'll look at those deployment processes. So the second method is using Azure App Service, a powerful platform as a service offering from Azure. Azure App Service allows you to build, deploy, and scale web apps quickly and efficiently. It's an excellent choice for hosting WordPress because it abstracts much of the underlying infrastructure management, allowing you to focus on your application. So when you do, for example, when we were talking about Azure Marketplace, it's essentially building a web app for you. With this method, what you would be doing is creating the web app first, and then it would be your responsibility to deploy WordPress. To begin, for example, for using app service as a deployment, you'll create a new app service instance in Azure. You create a resource, then you choose a web app with the publisher from Microsoft. During the setup, you'll specify your subscription, your resource group, and the application name. Once your app service is created, you can deploy WordPress using built-in deployment options such as Git, FTP, continuous integration platforms like GitHub or Azure DevOps. One of the key benefits of using Azure App Store is that you can scale and have high availability. You can easily adjust the resources allocated to your application, traffic demands, ensuring optimal performance. You can also customize the domain. You can add your own SSL certificates. It's very straightforward for you. Just clicks. That's all you got to do. While Azure App Service offers many advantages, it may come at a higher cost compared to other methods, especially as your site scales. Overall, Azure App Service provides a robust, flexible environment for hosting WordPress, making it a popular choice for many developers. I, for example, have used it for deploying my own applications and WordPress and headless content management systems. WordPress on Azure virtual machines requires a little more networking, configurations, which we would cover in a separate session, but I'll present some general requirements for that implementation. So continuing on method 2, which is our app service, this is just an example of where you can find the FTP credentials to connect to your server and access all the files related to your WordPress site. So under, I believe, deployment on your app service, you'll see deployment slots. And using an FTP client, you'll have the credentials there to connect to it. This is an example of the database service that is set up on Azure to work with WordPress site. The list here are tools you can use to work and connect to your database. Most of it is handled by WordPress, but in the case of performing backups, you might want to connect to it. So for example, MySQL provides several ways to create backups for database restoration. One of the most common and straightforward methods is using MySQL dump command utility. Since this is the app service, didn't really mention it, but you would also have to deploy Azure Database for MySQL Flexible Server. And here I provided a screenshot on how that resource looks like. So you'll deploy that, and then you'll have to configure your WordPress site to connect to it. So now let's dive into deploying WordPress on Azure virtual machines, a method that offers maximum control and customization. So an Azure virtual machine will provide you with the flexibility to configure your server environment exactly as you need it. This method is ideal for those who require specific server configurations or want to manage the underlying infrastructure themselves. To start, you'll need to create a new virtual machine in Azure Portal. You can choose a Linux distribution such as Ubuntu, which is commonly used for hosting WordPress. During the setup, you'll configure the virtual machine size, region, and network settings. Once your VM is up and running, you'll need to install a LAMP stack, which includes Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. This site provides the necessary components to run WordPress. After setting up the LAMP stack, you can download and install WordPress on your virtual machine. This process involves configuring the database, setting up the WordPress files, and completing the installation through the WordPress setup wizard. One of the main advantages of using Azure Virtual Machine is the level of control you have over the server environment. You can customize every aspect of the server to meet your specific needs. However, this method does require more technical expertise and time to manage compared to other options. You'll be responsible for maintaining the server, applying updates, and ensuring the security for it. Deploying WordPress on Azure Virtual Machine is a powerful option for those who need full control of their hosting environment. It offers flexibility and customization, but requires a higher level of technical involvement. I would require, if you want to go this route, maybe install on your own machine Agile, I think VirtualBox or Virtual Machine Engine, so that you can kind of practice locally, so that you can get familiar on what requirements you'll need to do, what configurations you'll need to have, and then later on going to Azure Cloud and try to replicate that process. With these three methods, we kind of covered deploying WordPress on Azure. Next, we'll compare these methods to help you decide which is the best for your needs. So next slide. So in conclusion, each method has its own set of advantages and trade-offs, and the best choice depends on your specific needs, technical expertise, and budget. As you consider your options, think about the level of control you need, the expected traffic to your site, and your group's ability to kind of like your group ability to manage the infrastructure. Because the knowledge that you might have to train others in order to learn how to manage that infrastructure. So that's all I really have. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this presentation has provided you with some insights into deploying WordPress on Azure. And these are some of the questions. I just have one question here that a lot of people have, is the cost. So you have Azure Marketplace and Azure App Service are both identical costs depending on what features you want added in your deployment. And when it comes to virtual machines, it's a bit more unique case because you have a set of resources allocated to a virtual machine. You can start a virtual machine, you can stop it, you can deallocate. So it's a little bit more complex, but everything is explained on the Azure pricing website. So one of these questions, for example, here is the cost implication of Azure and WordPress. So that, like I said, that really depends on what strategy method you take. And what's the load that this application has. And these are just some additional MySQL tips. So like if you wanted to do a backup, there is a way to do a backup through the portal, but it's a backup the entire server. Versus here, you could do a backup specifically to a particular database. So what I'll do now is show you how you can deploy through the Azure Marketplace WordPress.
So one question for you, Frank. In terms of cost, is an
Yeah,
app server, is an app deployment charged only when you're using it, where a VM is basically on time as long as you have it up and running, you're paying for that virtual machine. Is that a
yeah.
true statement? Like, is it cheaper to run the app side of it?
No. So an app service consumes storage. So you'll have an allocated amount of storage already for that server for the app service. So they'll charge you, but the cost will be based on top of hosting the application. It'll also be
Mhm.
based on traffic.
Okay.
Um, so you can stop an application. It'll still charge you kind of like a base rate based on the tier that you selected in the region.
Okay.
In terms of the same thing with the database server, it'll constantly charge you for the allocated storage space that you selected, but you can stop that server and then you won't have charges based on traffic.
Okay, so you can control cost by idling the app server or the VM,
Yes,
but you'll still get charged for the infrastructure that it's consuming
correct.
on an ongoing basis. Okay,
Correct.
thanks.
And they provide automate depending on the tier that you select, you can also auto scale. You can set certain thresholds or certain timeframes where you want your application to scale, which will incur more costs because you expect more traffic. But you can also downscale or downgrade your resources at a particular time to reduce the cost as well.
That's nice. That's nice.
On a virtual machine, because you can pay ahead of time a specific resource so that you have already like a reserved space and resources for a virtual machine. You pay a base rate based on those reserved resources, or you could do it per demand. But even if you shut down a virtual machine, they're still charging you the space, the resources consumed by that virtual machine just staying idle on the
Yes.
service. You can deallocate resources, but then to allocate resources back, you might lose a lot of storage or memory, stuff like that.
Right. You might lose the data storage, the logs, things like that that were in that
Right.
storage. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'll do a quick run through of deploying Azure on using the Azure Marketplace. Sorry, deploying WordPress on the Azure Marketplace. Let me pull my screen. There we go. So this is a TechUps Azure portal. I created a resource group called Demo. Let me go ahead and delete this service so that you can see it from scratch. So while that gets deleted, so you can let's start creating, kind of show you the marketplace. So this is the Azure Marketplace. As you can see, it has all the different applications, and you can filter by categories, publisher, operating systems, product type, pricing, and you can deploy as much as you want. Um, Also, one thing I didn't mention, which is kind of like a little bit off topic, but if you, for example, want to deploy virtual machine or a SQL server, in the sense of pricing, for example, you might have the cost of the license for the SQL server and not have the cost of the server being run on the cloud. So even if you're an idle, if you're having a SQL Server license, you're paying for that on a monthly basis. So something to consider whenever you're setting up a service if licensing for the operating system is involved. Um, so what that's going through is let's search for WordPress. You can just type in WordPress here. You'll see a few different options, a lot of options. So these are all, as you can see, different publishers. Some of them already have kind of like a base rate that they would charge in order to kind of run their deployment. But usually you can stick with just a Microsoft one and it's very straightforward. You can also favorite deployments so that they're easy to find afterwards. So when you create, these are the tiers I mentioned earlier. So you'll have free, basic, and standard and premium. And the differences are what resources are allocated and what features you can add to it. So for example, I'll go ahead and add a basic tier since we're just going to do a quick demo. I think I can show it here. So these are here we go. Here you can see kind of like what's included based on each tier. So a standard tier will include this app service plan, this database server, this virtual network configuration for application database and a private DNS. It'll include the Azure email communication services so that you can send email communication through the WordPress site. It'll include a CDN if you want to kind of front load your WordPress pages. It'll include your Azure Blob Storage so that instead of using the applications, the app service storage space, you can use separate service for that so that you don't consume storage on your application's hosted server. Caching, you can use Redis caching, backups for both the application service and database, redundancy, but all of these are great, but keep in mind the cost.
Yeah. Is free forever, or it says trial plan, so at some point
Yes.
it does become billable?
I think eventually it becomes available. We could look into more what this is. I haven't really used a free plan because some of the resources are just too. Looks like there's a 12-month offer, but I guess it depends on when you subscribe to Azure. If you're the first time subscribing to it, they give you like some credits, and some services that you choose. Um, if this is the first time using them, they'll give you like a free trial period as well.
Yeah. So it's great for doing, creating a scratch server or service to
Right.
test it out, keep it for a week, and then, get rid of it, after
Yeah.
a while. You can't use it. It's not meant for production runs or production volumes.
Yes, it'll just be too slow for your application to run and do
Yes.
all this installation. Yeah. And we could try to do another presentation as well on how do you navigate your cost in Azure.
Okay.
So I'll just go ahead and choose the basic tier. Let's see. Actually, let's do free tier, and then I'm able to show you how do we can scale the app service if needed. So I'll do the free tier first. I'm going to choose, let's see if I can choose East US. And I usually choose East US because they have East US 2. Yeah, East US 2. They usually have the most affordable pricing compared to the other regions. So I'll just do TechUp WordPress demo. You can choose to, as this is something new, to kind of make your site more unique in terms of the name that you give it, but that's optional. And then you can set up, I believe this is your WordPress administration email, username and password. We set that up right here. Oh, let's see, I typed it wrong. Go. And it's nice that it also enforces good password practices.
Yes.
So, depending on what tier you choose, when you go to add-ins, is where you'll have all the different options available to you, like Azure CDN, Azure Front Door, Azure Blob Storage. The higher you go in pricing tier, the more features are available to you. But you can always add these later on.
Okay.
I'm not going to use managed identities, so I just unchecked that. So you could also, this is another feature for creating a virtual network so that your applications are all within the same kind of span of networking. You could choose staging slots for deployment. The thing with WordPress is that you can have, I haven't used this yet for the WordPress, but you can have, depending on the pricing tier, you can have a staging application and then the production application, and you can swap um, files across the two servers with just a one click of a button. So like if you wanted to deploy your application to production and you have your staging environment where you want it, you can just swap the apps. But the thing with WordPress is that your server, your database, WordPress is database driven. So you would need to also swap your database at that point. Now you could handle with the swap as well the database configuration, certain fields, certain application secrets or keys when you handle the swap. But you would have to make sure that your WP config file is reading off of that. Or you have some way to update your WordPress config file based on some keys that you have stored when you do the swap. But again, you would have to run all the changes that you've made on your staging site on the database, unless you just swap database connections entirely.
Right.
And then as a good practice, I always do tags. So I do, what organization this is from, and then I do what purpose this application is for. Because the more you create on Azure, even though it has a good way of grouping applications or resources that you've created, sometimes it's easier to search through tags, especially when it comes to pricing. And this will go ahead and kind of do it all for you on all the resources that are created through this template. So it gives you an opportunity to kind of review everything that you created. You can copy these to, let me open Notepad here just so you can have it. You can copy these values into a password manager. You can copy it to some kind of file system or whatever you have, so that you're not trying to look for them later on and wonder what they are. You won't really need them other than your WordPress and your database access.
Can you go back after you created the app service? Can you go back to seeing the passwords, or are they lost?
You might have to access your server files through an FTP client to access the configurations made in the WordPress.
Okay.
For example, the admin email or password maybe. And the database you can access as well through WordPress, because this will be saved on the WP config so it can communicate. But each service will have, at least the database server will have this information, but the WordPress setup, it's possible that it might save it into application configuration keys. We can take a quick look. I can show you where that is, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that's in the user table. So you'd have to go into the
Exactly.
database, and
So
it's
it'll be saved.
encrypted. Yeah, it's encrypted in the database, and so yeah, you really do need to store that in a password vault, so you don't lose it.
And you can add these as well in as part of the application keys if you wanted to. But again, it'll just be displayed as a server key. It won't be as secure as a key vault. So it'll go through the process, and we'll just have to wait. It'll notify you once the resources have been deployed with a link on how to navigate to them. This shouldn't take very long because it's very lightweight. It's just a WordPress app and the SQL database. And in my presentation, some of the tools have links so that if you wanted to, for example, use Azure Data Studio, you have a link to how to download that. If you wanted to go to MySQL, if you wanted to use MySQL Workbench, there's a link on how to use that as well on the Microsoft documentation. And there's also a link to the FTP client that is pretty popularly used, which is FileZilla.
So while we're waiting, can you SSH to an app server?
Yes.
And so yeah, so all the files like you're talking about, WP that's wp-config.php is there, and you can log in through an SSH client like Putty and
Yes.
connect to it, and then actually do a VI or an editor on the file and read it.
Yes, you can SSH into your Azure App Service. You can even, with the Azure CLI, you can even connect to your MySQL database and manage it through terminal as well.
Okay.
With CLI and connecting to or SSHing into your app service, you might have to do some degree of authentication. I think you can, depending on, get two-factor authentication, um, depending on, what your account is with Azure, with
Right.
your Azure portal. But you can do that. You just might have to just do some password verification before, user verification before accessing the resource.
Yeah, I think that's an advanced topic, but usually you have to have some sort of SSH keys that have been downloaded so you can use
Yes,
that for authentication. You also need to open up the firewall to allow
yes.
port 22 access to the app service. So that's a much more advanced topic for sure.
That comes in handy a lot with virtual machine specifically too.
App, yes.
Here, you don't have to do really any configuration regarding what's hosting WordPress. It's really just managing the WordPress files and database. Anything you would need to do the database.
Just going back to your cost consciousness, one of the things that can happen is as you're doing development and testing, make sure you clean up behind yourself because those will continue to be charged.
Yeah.
Make sure you're looking at your billing statements that are online so you can see what's being billed every day or every month. It could be a surprise bill if you're not careful, especially if you've created some sort of production level, databases or servers. They're going to charge you, and it's going to probably be more than $30 a month per instance to run those, if not more, if you're not careful.
Yeah, that's happened to me. So by experience,
Yes.
I would recommend if you're working on something and it's experimental, kind of clean up after you're done. Don't leave anything hanging. That's why I recommend trying doing something local on your machine before you deploy it, so that you don't run that risk. I've had expenses over $100 that I completely forgot, or I might have just chosen something that looked very easy to deploy, and I chose all the features and didn't realize how the cost is for each feature after 1 month
Yes.
of
I'll
yeah.
tell a story for a company I used to work for a long time ago. They were using a lot of DevOps, and they had fired up a service and kind of forgot about it. They never used it. It was $1,000 a month, and we
Wow.
discovered it after quite a while. So that's always an idea. Do your audits. Make sure your billing statements are in line. Otherwise, your credit card might get charged.
Yes. And if you don't pay it, I could also tell you that what's going to happen is that um, they'll just freeze your account. You will not have access to anything on Azure until that bill is paid.
Yes. Yeah, they do. They're everything you get here on Azure or AWS or Google has a fee associated with it
Yeah.
somewhere, right? So yes, be careful. They will get their money one way or the other. So
Just finishing up on the SQL Server right now. Oh, looks like we're all done.
good. That wasn't long at all.
Nope. Yeah, so because it doesn't have that many resources to configure, it's pretty straightforward. Let's see if we can navigate. Usually this will update, but we can just go straight to the resource here. So you see where we have our app service plan, and we have our Azure database for MySQL Flexible Server. We can click on here. One thing we wanted to check if there's anything written to this is a service plan. So this would be what you consider your server, and then this is your web app. This is where your WordPress site is actually hosted on. This is your actual application. And if we go to settings, environment variables, we can see what's been written out. So you have your database configurations here. So you can swap some of these values. So I think when a WordPress staging site is deployed, I think you're really taking your entire database and application to the production server. Well, you take your staging application to the production server, connected possibly to a different database or SQL Server or whatever. It's possible. We've never really done that. That's something TechUp wants to look into.
Yeah.
So, and I don't see here the WordPress username or password for the administration. So that's something possibly just need to look up in the database if you did not. Oh, here we go. So it is stored in connection strings. So that's also something that's good too, if you did not copy those.
So if you don't recognize it, you forgot it, so it is there, right?
Yes.
If you change it through WordPress, does it change it here? Would be a interesting question.
Yes, I don't think it would.
Okay. So
Because it's possible that the WordPress instance that's deployed has a feature reading from these files in order to connect. It's possible. I would have to look into the WK config to see if it's pulling from these values. Because these are environment variables. It's possible that through PHP, it's pulling environment values. So if in terms of maybe editing the actual configuration file, you might be disconnecting it from whatever values are set here.
Right, and that could basically what I call brick your installation or your app server. You wouldn't be able to get in, so be very careful.
So there's some things you can monitor, kind of like any 500 requests, data that's in, data that's out, response times. This is for some free analytics that you can always keep an eye on. What was going to search? Oh, so one of the things I showed earlier is, for example, your FTP credentials so that you can connect to it. You can go under Deployment Center. You can get those values on their FTP credentials, and you can connect to with an FTP client. You can also set up a source to deploy to this app, to the web app, either through GitHub, local Git, Azure repos, and it'll automatically connect to whatever service you might have or give you the credentials in order to connect those two together. If you do have staging slots, this is where it would be located. You'll see kind of like a list of web apps that you have that are considered staging. You can handle those. You can navigate to those through here as well. And if you're considering, keeping in mind the cost, if you have a staging site, it'll also incur a separate cost because it's a separate hosted application as well. But it'll be the same app service. It'll just be another web app.
Right.
Yeah, so you can navigate to your website, just clicking browse here. You can stop it, you can restart it, etc. So let's see, because I think WordPress takes a little bit to install. Another thing I can show is, I don't know if this tier has it. This is an app service plan, and I think if you wanted to scale it, you would go to the plan, which is where the site is hosted on, and you can scale up your service. And it'll show you the different tiers you can scale your service app to.
I got it. And so scaling out, scale up is additional resources on the instance, and scaling out is multiple instances.
Yes.
Okay. So you can load balance across 2 to 3 servers. And you're going to pay for 3 servers if you do that. So,
yes. Yeah. I mean, for the usage that I've seen, basic and standard tiers have been more than enough.
Yeah.
For typical website, usage. And we'll scale it so that we can show that. Let's see. Let's go back to. Oh, let's see. So WordPress is installing. So through Marketplace, it'll handle all the installation for you.
Right.
Just give that a while. We don't want to change the scale yet. File system storage, it'll tell you how much storage you have on the application, on the server. How much, because it's WordPress is file intensive, so it'll have a lot of files here, especially if you're using storage within the app service.
Yeah.
I believe in order to perform backups, you might have to scale up. Settings, backups. Yes, you need to upgrade your app service plan for backups. We can show you with one of our existing applications here that are on a higher service plan. So we go to our WeCU client, we can go to backups, and you can see that Azure will automatically do backups for you every hour. And you can restore the application files by just clicks. This will not restore your database.
That will not. That'll just restore your app server.
Exactly. So keeping in mind the time of the application restore that you're choosing, you have to also keep in mind to what restore point you want your database server to be in as well. Because you don't want one of them to be ahead of the other. You want them to be kind of like at the same.
Yes. And the thing you have to pay attention to is when you've done an upgrade on your system, make sure you have a good backup prior to that upgrade on both the app server as well as the database, and then after it as well, so that you can, recover from that.
Yeah. I recommend before you start having a backup plan, having a backup protocol whenever you make changes on what exactly you want to do. For example, you can connect through FTP, pull all the files. You could wait for a backup to be created and then make your changes, including the database. And we'll show you how to do that in the database as well, because you can export your databases through Azure, but you can also specifically target the database in the server and do a SQL dump, like I mentioned in the PowerPoint. Let's see if this is still working. Yeah. So let's go to the database to see what we can do there. Demo. Go to the database. So this is a database dashboard. In here, the most important thing is, go to database section. Here you see all your databases for this server. As you can see, there's a TechUp WordPress database created by the deployment. If you chose the method of creating the app service yourself, this is something you would define. But this is all predefined by the marketplace deployment.
So your WordPress data is in that TechUp WPD file.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
And there is some connection information here as well. So you have instructions on how to do the workbench, connect to a browser locally, because Azure also offers some command line terminal. And here we go. This is the backup and restore. So here, Azure will automatically do backups. And this is for the server. So what you're doing a backup is of your entire server, all the databases. So it becomes a bit tricky if you think that, you can have multiple WordPress sites hosted on the same database server with multiple databases for each one of those sites, or a database per each site. your restore for the server is going to impact all of those sites. So if you were to do backups, you would have to do it individually per database, so that the site that you're wanting to back up, you back up to a specific database for that site.
Makes sense. Yes.
Yeah.
And you need to make sure on each server, you back up MySQL database. Well, actually, all of those that you see in those 5 databases, they're all associated with that MySQL instance that runs the WordPress site. So, you need to make sure you keep all of those. Otherwise, you could lock yourself out of the data.
Or you could just corrupt your site. You would have to
Yes.
reinstall.
Yeah. Yes, and that's not fun.
Yeah. So our WordPress has already installed, as you can see, and all the just follow a typical WP login. I think it's the main page for this. Oh, is it WP login? Sign in or?
Yeah, it should be. It could be something different like login. Or no, I'm sorry, it's WP-admin.
Admin.
Yes.
There we go.
There you
So
go.
we can enter our credentials here. We are good to go.
Yeah, there you
now
go.
have a WordPress site deployed on Azure under the free tier, which is the very basic needs. You can also do a standard tier. Sorry, on the free tier, you can also do a basic and standard tiers just with the database and app service. You don't have to choose the others as well. Or you can take advantage of the free tier to do what you want to do. And then once you're ready to kind of go live, you can just go to the app service and upscale and scale up your application.
Yep.
So that you can get access to those other resources.
Yeah, one thing to note on the free service, I noticed that it only had one virtual CPU. So that means the machine itself can pretty much think of one thing at a time. And
Yes.
so you would look at probably a basic B2 as the minimum for running a WordPress website. Gives you 2 virtual CPUs and about 3.5, 4 gig of memory, which tends to be enough to run it. It might be a little slow, but it's very operable, for you. So, but look at the price. You'll be charged 3.4 cents per hour for the instance. Now, I don't think that covers the database server.
That does not cover the database server. The
So,
database server does have a way to scale. And we can go to that page as well. It's computer storage. The good thing with a flexible server is kind of like it'll give you an allocation of virtual CPUs that you can go from, so you're not at kind of maxed out.
Yep.
So it's able to scale based on needs. So you already have that scalability at the cheapest price.
Yeah. And so that itself is $12.41 per month plus storage at 20 gig, 12 cents a piece, which is that's nothing compared to. So it's $14.71 per month to run that database server.
Yeah. And you can also specify the retention period for your databases here too.
Awesome.
You can also auto scale your inputs and outputs. You can pre-provision them, so you want to pay ahead of time. You can change how much gigabytes. This is all very customizable. You just have to keep in mind what your need is. Monitor kind of like a particular deployment, and then if you need more resources, adjust accordingly.
Right. Well, this has been super informative. I appreciate it. I do a lot of work in AWS, and seeing Azure, from end to end here on the app server side really is nice to see how the marketplace deployment makes it just does it all for you, which is great. With that, you have to have some responsibility over costing, but they give you a lot of options here. So the idea is, explore the UI. Anybody can set up an account. You apply a credit card, and at least you get the free tier. So you shouldn't get any charges other than some of these basics for the database server if you leave it up and running. But clean up behind yourself. and you won't incur any costs really. So it's a great way to experiment with the Azure, footprint, Azure cloud.
Yeah.
I
And as you
love it.
can see, it was very easy to scale the application. Just quick clicks and you're good to go. You
Yes.
can have your own managed certificates here. You can bring your own certificates for your SSL certification. Um,
Or they'll provide a certificate for you.
yeah.
Okay.
Um, and well, they'll manage your certificate. Yeah.
All right.
You get access to server logs as well. You can also kind of SSH into your server and kind of see any logs that Apache might have been doing. Um, Backups are now enabled, as you can see. We're good to go there. Um, yeah, looks like they're starting to create some web jobs. So if you want like I believe like a scheduled task or something. Um, there's a lot of still stuff in preview, so more resources are going to be coming online in the future, I hope. You could do, looks like you could do load testing. I haven't done that yet. That'd be good to kind of experiment with. But keep in mind when you do load testing of the resources used, because you're going
Yeah.
to pay for them.
Yes. So.
You can even go to a page that they provide a tool to SSH right on the browser if you want it as well. So you don't have to have that necessity of having a machine with the Azure CLI or an SSH
Yes.
tool. Um, yeah, and you can always and to delete this super easy. So let's say you want to shut down and clean up all your resources. Just go up here, highlight all your resources, click delete, and just type in the words, and it'll take care of it for you.
And there you go. Yes. So everything you just did, Frank, you're destroying. What is this? Easy come, easy go. I love it. But it does show you how to clean up around, behind yourself.
And one cool thing too is if you have a set of resources deployed, you can export the deployment scripts to deploy those resources in the future. And it'll provide you a YAML file that you can import in case you want to replicate all your resource deployments. You just have to change some
Oh,
values in terms of, like, for example, application service name, what the resource name is, what the subscription ID, stuff like that.
so you could put that into something like GitLab and check it into source code and
Yes.
keep your template there, modify it, templatize it, and then export it out when you need it so you don't lose the whole configuration. So you could stand up an environment, deploy it from GitLab into Azure, tear it down, and then rebuild it over and over again. So that's a very advanced topic, but that's kind of you're talking DevOps at that point.
Yeah.
Infrastructure of the code. So, Frank, that was a wonderful description. I think the video we'll put up on our Facebook. I'm sorry, our WordPress website ourselves, techupgroup.org. So we'll have that video out there as soon as it processes. What's the next versions?
Yeah, so we could do presentations next on maybe virtual machines, how we could deploy WordPress on a virtual machine and what configurations you would need to do. Um, and we can also kind of do a little brief overview of Azure so that we can look into like the cost dashboard, um, scale up, scale down, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Maybe
And
deploying of other applications too.
yeah, I think so. And describing, resource groups and what a resource group is and how to segment your projects. And then, you could delete the resource group and it'll delete all the infrastructure underneath it. So,
Definitely.
so lots of cool things that we can do in the environment. So, hey, Frank, I appreciate it very much. Thanks everybody for joining our video, and we look forward to more live sessions with Frank on Azure and cloud infrastructure. So thanks, Frank. Appreciate it very much.
Welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome.